Good evening, welcome to the regular meeting of RSU 74 Board of Directors here at Tribeca High School on September 4th. We're starting a little bit late at 6:05. Agenda item number 1, adjustments to the agenda. I have one that we need to add to it, Mr. Comfrey. Agenda item 5A.
To see if the board will approve the Maine Hudson Trails travel trip for the middle school on October 2nd and October 3rd.
Is that supported? Darren. Please, Tom.
It's a trip that we've taken over the last 11 years. Mr. Carey runs it. This year, Mr. Ferrari will go. We send 2 or 3 extra additional support staff. It's up the Kingfield Way. It's overnight. Kids get some leadership, some team building, and some much-needed exercise out of doors. It's something we've routinely done, and I support it. Thank you.
Agenda item number 2, to see if the board will approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of August 7th, 2019, and the special board minutes of August 26th, 2019. Do I have that motion? Or is that supported?
Can we separate those, because they were different meetings, and if we weren't at both meetings, then I'd have to vote differently.
Okay, are you making a motion to separate?
I'm making a motion that we separate the 2 approvals for the 2 different meetings.
Okay, is that supported? Okay, the first one, any objection, unanimous consent to approve the split? Motion carries. To see if the board will approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of August 7th, 2019. Do I have that motion? Troy, Darren, discussion, questions, comments? Any objection, unanimous consent to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of August 7th, 2019. Motion carries. Agenda item 2A, to see if the board will approve the minutes of the special board minute of August 26, 2019. Do I have that motion? Troy, Darren, discussion, questions, comments?
Just that on the signature here, it said Wednesday, and it's actually Monday, right? On the handout.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
So that needs to be changed. And then the only other comment, I mean, I wouldn't vote on it because I wasn't there, so I don't know whether exactly, but I was surprised by the fact that people wouldn't want to
Okay.
join the teams.
So is there any other changes, questions, comments to the minutes of the special board meeting of August 26, 2019, corrected to Monday? Understood.
Just that there was an additional motion in there that I think we missed. There was a motion to move the question that failed. And then there was a motion by Tammy, seconded by me, that went through.
Yep. There's 2 motions, 1, 2, and 7.
Can you say that one more time?
There was 2 motions to move the question. The first one was made by me, seconded by Tammy, and that failed. And if we're gonna put, Coach spoke regarding why the numbers were less and why they're less across the state. If we're gonna put any information about what the coach said or what she spoke to, it all should be in there. If we're not gonna put anything in there, then I don't think anything should be in there from the coach. Like, either nothing or everything that she said.
Any other questions, comments, discussion to the minutes? Objection, unanimous consent to approve as corrected.
I want to not vote on it. I wasn't there, so I can't.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Even though they're wrong?
As amended.
As amended. As amended with
What
your
are
edits.
you amending the coach? Are you taking that out?
Is that what the board wants me to do? Do we want?
Or are you adding what she said?
I have no recollection of being able to recap everything she said. So based on your feedback, I would strike those comments.
Okay. Now,
So now it would be with those notes, based on what the coach said, stricken, and then to include a motion that moved the question from Mrs. Harrington, seconded by Mrs. Murray, and then the motion failed. That's what I have for the corrections.
any other corrections? All in All in favor of approving the minutes of the special board meeting of August 26, 2019 as corrected? Opposed? Abstained?
Well, if you weren't here, you can't vote on
You can vote on the minutes.
it. Something changed.
One abstention.
I didn't think,
The agenda item number 3, report presentations, academic goals presentation, Mr. Tracy.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to school. It's a pleasure to be back. We are up and running, and I'm pleased to be with you in year 3. And we've got a wonderful staff, and a wonderful student population, families, parents, etc. It's a wonderful spot to be, and things are going really well. One of the things I like to do annually is to offer you, the school committee, and any members of the audience, I don't want to reduce it to Mr. Tracy's plan, but sort of talk a little bit about my plan for leading the district and sort of where we're at as a leadership team and with the initiatives that are earmarked to take place this school year. So in your packet, you board members, there's just kind of a one sheet. It is colorful. And it has the slides that Mr. Hall is also going to put in the back of the room. So I'm going to refer to those slides as swiftly as I can. But I want to bring you through what I see are academic goals this school year. So in short, next slide, Mr. Hall. There we go. So as always, I see the leadership of a school district really taking 2 prongs, and those are 1, academic, and 2, operational, or operational governance. And so the things that I have listed up there are the things that I maintain that we're going to either do this year or, frankly, continuations of things that began over the last 2 years. So, number 1, we're looking at data-driven instruction as a goal, an academic goal. We're looking at community-centric programming. And number 3, we're going to be working hard to learn as a staff about mental health and trauma training. We're going to look to have that, participate in that and learn about that this year. The last 2 things on the operational side, I'm going to continue to work to find efficiencies for your school districts and cost savings. To try to show you places where I believe we've done some of that in the last couple of years, and I'm also going to continue to provide you with opportunities that options for cost reductions over the next few years. Number 2, and then the last thing on that list is to implement the strategic plan. Last fall, many members of you and folks in the room were part of the strategic planning process. And so this begins the year where I go ahead and implement that. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we continue through the slides. So the first goal, just to kind of dive into it, there's a lot of text on that on that page, so I'll try to be brief. When I talk about academic programming and using data to inform instruction, what we're specifically and succinctly talking about are how we're going to look at our NWEA, MEA, SAT data, those assessments that we use, to help inform us as to where our deficits are and how we can program and fix, the things that are quote unquote, maybe they're not broken, but the areas we want to improve. One area we've been looking at over the last couple of years, and it's sort of come to a head, is this notion about writing prompts. And I know as a school district we've done writing prompts in the past, but we believe that there's a connection between reading and writing. So an area that we want to improve on both the SAT at the high school, as well as when we test across the district, and frankly help us with our literacy skills as human beings, is to improve on our writing skills. So that's something we're going to look at district-wide. We've already begun to look at how we're going to do that. We're looking at SAT preparation, really diving in specifically with SAT prep at the high school level, because we see how important the SAT is for college entry and performance after high school with our high school students. So we're going to work on that. And the last thing we're looking at is district-wide RTI development. One of the things that I'm proud of that has come out of Garrett Skank School was an RTI program, really, that was developed by the teachers under the guise of Ms. Butler. And it's just, they've really earmarked, I think, a nice model for looking at data to inform their instruction. And for those of you that aren't education-ease and don't speak the education-ease language that I sometimes use, it's when we go take our car to the mechanic and they stick that diagnostic tool into our car, right? And they go, oh, your O2 sensor is bad, right? Or something's right on your car, and then they can look at that specifically and improve it or fix it. That's what we do as educators when we're looking at the data to help improve mathematics or literacy instruction. So I won't belabor that any further, but any questions on goal number 1? Yes?
Well, first of all, could I ask, these are very hard to read. That's because you're taking these things and there's not much distinction. So it would be really nice when we get materials that, you know,
You don't need a magnifying glass to read
That's
it.
right. So it's about the contrast between the color and the print, and it's even hard up here right now. So it'd be really nice to think about those things
Sure.
to make it easier. That's a small thing. Writing is important, and it's more than just, as you said, it's about literacy. And I really like the idea of using data to drive our actions. And I like the emphasis on writing. And I think that means that we have to become a really writing conscious community. And that everything and everybody needs to pay attention to writing and how things are written in all the aspects of them that we have. So I hope that will be something to think about rather than just having this silo of, well, we're working on writing prompts and we're going to get students to use writing prompts and be able to respond to that. But writing is really it's something that takes place everywhere, and everybody needs to be a teacher of writing in many ways, and the students need to get the lesson that they're doing this in everything that they do. Every time that they've got a writing assignment, no matter what class it's in, what level, that it's important. And that means that all of us, teachers, board members, administrators, recognize that in the materials that we distribute and use and so on. So I just really hope that we can see that that's needs to be done in a very broad way like that. So,
Anybody else?
Thank you. Thank you for your feedback. Goal number 2, we are looking at trying to offer and provide more community-centric opportunities. What does that mean? What we're hoping to do, we recognize that the schoolhouse is not just a place for our 5 to 18-year-olds, that really it might be the center of our communities. And so how do we invite our community, our 19-plus-year-olds and our birth to 4-year-olds into our buildings more, and how can we engage with our communities more? So I don't have details on that, although there's some ideas already generating across the schools outside of me sort of stating that as a goal, and now I'm kind of working with my team and the teacher teams and staff across the district to figure out how can we employ more of a community-focused school system. Also, we are in the process of trying to use multiple ways to communicate with the public, not just our website or not just the call burst system or snail mail in the backpacks, but also Twitter, Facebook. We're looking to ramp those efforts up a little bit more. Goal number 3 is really to provide more mental health and trauma training. We have learned over the last few years, I mean, I think any educator in the room and probably any person in the room recognizes that there are more traumatic and crisis-type, child welfare-type concerns that we're dealing with more and more in the school system and across the country. But we certainly are seeing some of those things locally, and we're going to work to provide training to the staff. Already in this month, September and October, we have some things lined up to begin processing through what is early childhood crisis, and what tools in our toolbox can we have as teachers to help navigate and better educate our kids. Questions on those goals? I know I'm running through them awful fast. These things, I'll just remind you that they boil up from a body of information from year past. You know, we look at what did we do last year, what worked, what didn't work, what does our strategic plan say. You probably can't read this, as Mrs. McQuiston just said, but each one of these goals that I mentioned relate directly back to the strategic plan. And those are in your packet that you probably can't read, as she just said. But so I will highlight it for you. Goal number 1 goes with academic achievement, which is goal number 4 in the strategic plan. Our academic goal number 2 goes with our strategic plan goal number 1, which is to improve a sense of community. And this last academic goal we're working on, support strategic plan goal number 3, was to promote a healthy and safe school. So this last thing, as I give you what I have for an early update on the strategic plan itself, that I continue to reference, we have added a performing arts program that fits. That was a specific thing we said we were going to try to do. We were able to do that this year, and we've hired a teacher. We're beginning to deploy a performing arts program. We've added a middle school Jobs for Maine graduates position. That was a 5-year grant we've received at no cost. It's an exploratory opportunity for career options for our youth, which was something else we said we wanted to focus on, particularly at the middle school. That fits goal number 2. We've updated the comprehensive emergency plan, which fits goal number 3. You're going to actually talk about that later in our meeting. We are working on a common planning time. That's goal number 4. The nuances of common planning time are how do we get all third grade teachers together, for example, with 3 different locations across a school day or a school week or even a month. So there's some difficulty in how we strategize to do that, but we're working on that. Continue to work with vertical teaming. That's something we've done for the last couple of years with regard to consistency among schools with assessments and curriculum, maintaining and developing more consistency, and that fits goal number 4 on our strategic plan. So I'm happy that we really took the reins this summer to say, what are we already starting to do that befits the strategic plan? What are some other ways we're going to try to do the things we said we wanted to do in our strategic planning? So I'm pleased with where we're at. Questions at this point?
I see none.
Let me just, one last slide, sir. One word about calibration. I'll put that up. Sorry, it's the last slide up there behind you. I will spare sort of the history lesson, although I used to teach history, so it might be hard for me, but I will behave. In World War II, one of the, and I don't want to get into the sort of the debate on who won World War II, but some of the United States' effectiveness during World War II was their all hands on deck. When one spouse would go away to war, the other spouse was home working in the factories. There were rations on gasoline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was an all hands on deck approach, and something that I've articulated to the staff this year, and it's pressure. I know my management team feels my pressure of these are the things we said we're going to do. How we getting those done? The all hands on deck approach means everybody from soup to nuts is involved with these district initiatives. A great example of that is for our trauma training in September. We're inviting the entire staff. So our kitchen staff, our bus drivers are all invited to the professional development opportunity on early childhood trauma, which I think is outstanding. It's something we don't always do, to include every person in these initiatives. So anyway, that's important. I just wanted to sort of point out my part, you as a board member, knowing these district initiatives, what is it that you think you might have to offer in knowing that we're doing these initiatives? And just to remind everybody sort of what that word calibration means, to adjust precisely for a particular function. That's one of the Google definitions. And I think that's important. I appreciate your support as your superintendent. I think we're off to a great start. And I'm here if you have any questions on those goals I just rolled out.
Any more questions? Okay.
That's it, sir. Thank you.
Presentations, fall athletic update. Lead on that.
Miss Richard, would you just highlight for us where we're at with fall athletics? Sure.
Is that too much? Just pass those around. Thanks. So pleased to be here tonight and let you know that our athletics is up and going, and it's very exciting. First off, our fields are in excellent condition. I'm telling you, they're beautiful. Probably the most impressive in the league in our Mountain Valley Conference. My neighbor might say they've got a nice couple of fields. They do, but ours are wind protected, and they're gorgeous in the fall. And it's beautiful. So we claim it, number one. And really thank you very much to our staff for doing such a great job in a dry summer where it was difficult, you know, to maintain and grow that grass. So impressive. Thanks. We had two soccer scrimmages yesterday, and it was really fun to see the students out in action, and excited to get back in the swing of things. Just to let you know a little bit about numbers, how many student participants there are in our boys soccer program. These are, I have to tell you, they're rolling numbers, but as of today, we have 14 in our boys program, 14 or so in the girls program. Numbers have fluctuated a little bit. Cross country, we're running right now, we're at 3. Football over in Madison, we're at 10. Cheering at Madison at 5, and golf 1. For a grand total in our high school is 47. That's at 25% of our high school is involved in athletics this fall. At our middle school, we have 19 in boys soccer, 18 in girls soccer, 7 in cross country, 44 in the middle school. So we're very healthy numbers, I think. Mike Burnham, who is the head of the Maid Principal Association, made mention in the Bangor Daily on the 20th, just the day after the season opened, about he made an observation about numbers across student participation numbers across Maine. And what he said is generally they're down somewhat, but just to, how does that reach us? How does that impact Carabec? We run just a sign-up page in our athletic director meetings about who's going to offer a JV program. Last year, I think there were only 2 schools that offered no JV program. Well, just this year, from the kind of the agreement about who's going to offer a JV program, among girls, there are 9 of our 15 schools that are not offering JVs at all, and for boys, 8 that are not offering any JVs at all. So you're talking 50% of the league is not offering a JV program that accompanies. And what that is following a varsity match. Typically what would happen is you'd have a shorter game, and you'd either play 7-on-7, smaller group of students, or if you have enough students, 11-on-11. Well, typically, if you have about 14, 15, that's the dividing line about, well, we probably don't have enough to run a 7-on-7. If you're 18 or better, then you're going to either go 7-on-7 or 11, whole new squad. So just for your information, that's one of the impacts that I see as an athletic administrator in our district is as an impact. So we have to devise other ways to make sure that our students have a chance to be involved, which may come to a scrimmage on a different day where we can combine a couple of different schools. That sort of thing might be a possibility to allow those younger junior players to be involved in athletics. But I guess I mentioned this just to show you the impact that we receive from the declining numbers. I mean, who wouldn't want to play sports? But apparently it is declining. So anyhow, just wanted to give you that information. But you're in for a treat this year. We've got a lot of great, exciting students, and it's going to be a fun year. Thanks.
Any questions?
Incidentally, the schedules that I circulated, high school is accurate. Middle school will be accurate as of Friday, because that's the final moment when our athletic administrators will get together and just if there's any changes that have to be made because of busing and that sort of stuff. But as far as I know, it's accurate. So, thank you. Question?
So with the declining numbers, and I wasn't able to be at the meeting on the 26th because it was such late notice. I don't understand why there's not more of an effort to combine the sports and why we're not more interested in doing that so that more children have an opportunity to play. I mean, I look at cross-country, say there's only 3 boys and girls doing cross-country.
I'd suggest, just from my experience in this kind of thing, you would think that would be a very popular and an easy to operate sport. What I think it is we've just had a number of different coaches, so the ability to develop a program and kind of hang it together is, I think we've got a great pick this year, and kind of go from there, but I really think that's one of those things that in developmental levels that we have to grow.
Well, I guess just with all of these, it does have to grow, and I remember when it was pretty robust, both here, which had to do with a very robust summer track program that Mr. Bowen and Mr. Gopian had developed for the kids in the area, and they all played together, and they had a wonderful time, and there was 100 kids running
Exciting,
in the track.
exciting.
It's so exciting. And then they won, and they did it intentionally so they would have more
Right.
pipeline, and a lot of students did very, very well at that. But if we have declining numbers, I don't, kids just like, they need to play. And
It's true. Across
and-
Maine, however, we're challenged by both computer excitement that is about us and a very high opportunity to work. So there are some high school
Well,
students that
there's
would choose that.
That with the declining, yeah, that's there too. But also, I just don't know, why aren't we combining teams? I don't understand. I'm new to the board, and I don't understand why people would object to more collaboration between the schools.
Okay. Chip, good point.
Oh, question.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to answer something.
Well, certainly for football and cheering, we are. And so we've got 10 of our young people in the high school level, and I don't have the exact number right off the top of my head in middle school, but I'm sure that it's more than half a dozen from middle school that are also playing that. So for those sports that seem to be mutually appropriate, it's worked, and I think very well. I know that they have a total number of 20 high school cheerleaders, for instance, and of those 25 are ours. So that they have an opportunity to do that sort of thing, and that is just for the fall cheering. And I know that we take advantage of that in the wintertime as well. So our golf program is accommodating our golfers here. So I think that you'd find that there are programs that do work. Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Well, my question was for the one golfer. So we're not busing and coaching one golf student.
What we're doing with the one golfer is I'm joined with a Madison team, and we're realizing that the experiences of our young people here might not bring them to golf. Not every student has a chance to learn how to play golf, and they're a little hesitant if they've never picked up a club to join the varsity team. So one of the things we're trying to do in our middle school, and you notice that perhaps on the bottom of the middle school schedule, I said we're looking at some intramural opportunities. So in our golf, what we're trying to do is get 3 or 4 opportunities for those middle school students to golf. Maybe make a trip up to the local golf course so that they can at least be introduced to it. And then, as you mentioned before, our summer programs, we can grow that a bit so that there's an opportunity for golfers to enjoy that. Starting at the younger years, even as low as grade 5, you can teach golf. The same sort of thing with tennis. In order for us to hold our strong tennis programs, we have to introduce that just a bit earlier. So we're looking at, again, trying to do some intramural kinds of things, which would be after school, but take the tennis courts, for instance, in the fall when there's less competition for the spring. You can get to the courts because the high school kids are there in the springtime, but they're not hanging around. I mean, some will come and play, but they're not scheduled in the fall. So we could take advantage of that, really try to grow those 2 sports, introduce it a bit earlier to students so that we can have our own, and as you mentioned, robust program. I think that would be a good move for us.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Yeah, so are we sharing a golf coach or we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question and a comment. So did the golf merger not need to come in front of the board?
My understanding is that we're just collaborating. In other words, our golfer is just simply working with that team and playing as a Carabec student. So it wouldn't be a formal collaboration that the board had to vote on, to my understanding.
It wasn't a cooperative team. It was a collaboration. That is, the student receives coaching kind of thing from the common coach. But the Madison team would have, they have more than, you have to have 7 athletes to be a team. So they have 7, we have just 1. And so the only opportunity our athlete has is to receive coaching and competition within the practice schedule. But when it comes time to end of the season kinds of things, she wouldn't compete as a team because we don't have 7. She's an individual who's just simply practicing with Madison. And that was an agreement that I think Madison extended to us.
Another question then. Do we not want to offer her to play for a team?
We could if we could get 6 more kids to play golf.
No. A cooperative team.
Oh.
Like, are we not willing to offer that to, or try to offer that to our one?
Madison was reluctant. They agreed to have that student come and play with them and receive coaching. But as far as when you organize a golf match, the top 7 compete against each other. So for instance, if Mount Abram came, 7 Madison players, because they have a team, would go against 7 Mount Abram players.
Okay.
And then there's subsequent exhibition matches. Our athlete plays the exhibition match, not to displace a Madison student in that competition.
Okay. And then just a comment. Or maybe I guess it's a question. Do you think that we can do anything more as a district, and especially at the high school level, but to get athletes excited? More homecoming events, more pep rallies, more excitement into the, the athletics that we offer. Because I really feel like that has seriously dwindled in the last 10 years, as well as numbers. And I don't know if there's a direct correlation, but.
Well, I had one comment from a faculty member who said, Julie, homecoming was really boring last year. Can you jazz it up a little bit? I said, absolutely. She said, I'll be on the committee. I said, hooray, how about you head that committee? No, I'm teasing you. But, so trying to, coming in as a person who's have not experienced the Carabec culture except 1 year last year. So you try to assess the community culture of sport and what goes on. So to try to level. So I recruited, what I'm trying to say, people who graduated from Carabec and try to get them to maybe take some ideas of yesteryear, but also maybe some kind of new stuff that would be interesting and involve more students. It is a difficult measure to change the culture of a school. And so that's what we're really, that's the idea that you're pondering. How do we change it so it's a little more enthusiastic and higher numbers of students participating? And it follows Mr. Tracy's example of all hands on deck. So that's the same ideas. I think it will work in overall education, but also works for athletic experiences.
Okay, I agree. I think that you have to reach the kids and stuff that they're interested in, not what we think is okay. It definitely has to be, student-headed committee or whatever.
I also have been working with cheerleaders to see if we can get a few, they can teach us some cheers. Mostly their experiences happen where they practice in Madison. So if we can get our own cheerleaders, 5 or 6 students, to teach us a few basketball cheers, maybe we can have a little echo back and forth for basketball season. I don't know. But we'll try those kinds of things to show students how to be involved properly.
Another question. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, reports. Written reports from mailed to board members and are available online at www.carabec.org. And
Can I have a question? Do we have a chance to ask questions about those reports?
Yes.
Okay, late, so
We'll
now.
We'll get to it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Superintendent to report appointments. We have 8 appointments, 2 of which asterisks. Would you explain those, please, Mr. Tracy?
Yes, good evening again, everyone. Just a recollection here for the summer, the board granted me the hiring authority over the summer due to timing and et cetera, to allow us to secure good candidates. I'd like to just notice here Blaze Candico, we were able to hire as a math physical science teacher at the high school, and Mr. Tim Goding as a special education teacher at Garrett Skank and Solon. So I was pleased to welcome those gentlemen. I won't go over my written report unless anybody has questions, but I do want to highlight a couple things in your packets as far as forms. I did put the strategic plan back in there for you to make sure you reviewed that as a school board. You did ask me over the summer after our training to come up with a signature sheet. So those of you that were at that training are reminded, and it should be in front of you, that policy VCA is something that a lot of districts, the school board members looked at through and actually signed that you agree to that policy. And if you wouldn't mind signing that and getting that to Linda before you leave tonight, that would be great. I would highlight the expense report, although it's early in the school year, we're pretty well on par. We did, and the facilities and maintenance is way down there because we've done a lot of expense over the summer, as well as the high school $300 and something thousand payment on the renovations in this building have already come out, which is why that percentage is low compared to the school year left. And the other thing that the Building and Grounds Committee asked for me to provide for you tonight, and Lori will get to it, she's back there somewhere, the facilities updates from the summer. So unless you have any questions for me regarding the things I just highlighted, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay, so they're on the report.
And then every administrator will have an opportunity to comment.
Oh,
If
do
you have-
you want to start with the administrator, or
You start with me.
start with you?
Yes.
I don't think I have a question for you. No, but I can't find the little thing I'm supposed to sign, but I'll get that later. Okay.
We have extra copies.
All
Thank you.
right.
Okay, agenda, any other questions?
For me.
Agenda item 4A2, resignation. We have Ross Seroy, Special Ed Tech 3, CCS has resigned. 4A3, nominations, we have none.
Excuse me, Mr. Demchek, just a comment on the resignation. Mr. Sorois has resigned as an ed tech, but was rehired as the JMG teacher at the middle school. And that position shared with Madison. It's a grant-funded position for 5 years. We anticipate that that will actually go longer than the 5 years, but at this time, he's taken that position as JMG teacher for the middle school. For us, half-time and half-time at Madison Junior High.
Questions on that? Agenda item 4A3, nominations, we have none. 4B, administrators. Mr. Richards, anything to add?
The biggest thing I'd like to add is through the efforts of Mr. Francis, we currently have 7 new Prometheum board panels in our building. They're interactive TVs that kind of take the place of the old whiteboards and the Neo boards. To the tune of around $8,000 in grants that he was directly responsible for, and or the Gear Up team through grant money through them. So we have 4 currently up in the classrooms, 3 arrived today to bring us to the total of 7. I've already talked to maintenance about getting those installed so I can schedule training. But that's $8,000 that didn't come out of our pocket, we got through grants.
Thank you.
Ms. Butler?
Can I just want to make a comment. I want to thank you. I did ask because I'm new. I've been looking at the websites and I've been looking at the handbooks and so on. And I want to thank you for the handbook for the high school because of its organization. And all of the stuff about conduct and behavior is there together in one section. And it makes a great deal of sense. And I would like to ask that as things are reviewed, that you review that area for the other handbooks where there's stuff about conduct and behavior in multiple places, some of which seems consistent with each other and it doesn't, but it was very nice to see in that handbook that it was all together there.
Thank you.
Those things are always in flux, I know, but.
Ms. Butler, anything to add?
I think the school year has started well in the elementary schools. The kids are excited to be back with their friends. As I said in my report, the parents are just as happy to have them back in school as well. I gave you the dates for my open houses, September 25th at Solon and at 6, and September 26th at Garriskank at 5:30. So board members are welcome and invited to come. I just want to mention some, in my role as staff development chair, on what Mr. Tracy said. The workshop that we're doing this month is on September 18th, and board members are welcome to come if you're interested, if you work at all with children, either through rec or coaching or any function that you might have. I think it'll be a really interesting presentation. It's Wednesday, September 18th from 1 o'clock to 3:30 here at the high school for all the district staff. And our presenter is named Brittany Ray. She was one of the presenters at our attendance summit that we held last year in Brewer. She's the director of TREE, which is Transforming Rural Experiences in Education. She's been an English teacher and guidance counselor. She was Maine Teacher of the Year in 2007. She's done a lot of work and learned about adverse childhood experiences, their effect on trauma and poverty, and effect on children, their learning and their behavior, because we are seeing such an increase in our schools with students that are really struggling and their families that are struggling with those kind of things. So I think it'll be interesting. It'll be kind of a part 1, and then she's coming back on October 16th on a Wednesday, again 1 to 3:30 here, to work with the district staff for a second part to that. So, you know, if you have a time available, please feel free to join us that day. Thank you.
Questions?
Just a couple questions on the report, and first of all, a comment. As I was looking at your handbooks for Solon and Garriskank, I just want you to know that if I had a child new to this district and going into your schools, I would feel so secure about the child going in there, because I thought your welcome letters just so nicely. I think it's just really well done. On the first 2 paragraphs in your report, you mentioned about the numbers, and maybe there's a different meeting in which we get updates on the numbers of schools that are children in the schools. Is that an October 15th thing or something?
I will present that.
Okay, that'd be great.
October.
Yeah, and if we also, the other place would be on the summer program. Again, I'm looking at this data-driven stuff. To get some, and you don't have to do this now, but maybe as we go on in the future, how many children participate in the summer programs and so on, so we can get some information about that, that'd be great. Okay, thanks, yeah.
Mr. Desjardins.
Hello all. You'll see in front of you a flyer that looks like this. This one right here. It is our back to school bash, and we started it last year. It was very, very successful. This year we're going even bigger. I was at Anson Days that Tammy put on over there and was inspired. Our PTO also helped. Some of our PTO members were there. So this particular year, we were talking about excitement. We were talking about excitement up to high school, but we're also trying to build that down to middle and elementary school. This is deliberately on the same day as the New Portland Fair. This is in the morning from 10 to 2. Our hope is to capture a lot of the families before they head out to New Portland. This particular year, we're going to have Larry in the dunk tank again. Thanks, Larry. Mr. Tracy's going to be in the dunk tank. Troy said he's going to be in the Speedo in the dunk tank. Thank you, Troy. All sorts of other, thank you for permission, all sorts of other wonderful things. The National Guard's coming out with their obstacle course. That's huge. We have the giant rock climbing wall. We have 3 bounce houses, 1 water bounce house. So it truly is going to be something great for the kids. It's $5 for a bracelet, but we don't let money be a barrier. So, you know, we help folks out that need help for that as well. One of the reasons we try to do this is we're trying to build community. Mr. Tracy talked a little bit about Caribbean Community Center and things we're doing with the community and trying to engage folks. So we're inviting a lot of the grandparents out too, because a lot of the grandparents are the primary caregivers, so we're making an extra effort for that. Besides that, we had a tremendous opening. I want to thank Larry, and I would like to thank the Transportation Department, because although the busing, we've been, you know, it's tough with our bus drivers, making sure we have enough. I think it went pretty smoothly, all things considered, for the different constraints that we're under. We're still working on some of the transportation after school, going to and from places, but with the vans that we have and the willingness, as Mr. Tracy said, all hands on deck. I mean, I drive van during the day sometimes to take some kindergartners from half days home if that's necessary. We all wear a lot of different hats, and we're all really happy about doing that. Questions that I can entertain?
First of all, I want to thank you for the website of the school, which had a link to the staff with
Yep.
their the contact information.
That's right.
I've been looking for that, it was very nice to find it, so thanks a lot for
Thanks for
that.
that feedback.
Now, on your report,
Yes.
you mentioned the teams and programs. Now, again, I'm new, so I
Sure.
really want to get caught up here. And I have they said you have a data team
Yes.
working on the NWEA scores, what they mean and how they can assist teachers.
Yes.
Can you give us some information? What did your data team find out?
Sure, absolutely. So this could be as in-depth as you'd like it to be, because I'm really big on the data. Last year, and what we're going to do again, I believe this year for the board, is we put on a little data presentation as well, so we kind of get drilled down with the data. Remember everybody last year, I think it was the Garrett Skank. What the data team consists of is a group of my Title I folks that what they do is when they administer the NWEAs, we administer them uniformly to all the students. The teachers don't administer them. And then after that, they gather that data, and we sat with Mr. Brian Twitchell last year, and we developed protocols so all of the data folks can reach out and they schedule meetings with all the teachers, to which I attend as well. And then we talk about the data. We have their class list right there. We talk about each student individually and what that NWEA score means. Meaning, do we see trends? Is there number sense issues? Is there reading fluency issues? Things like that.
Can we get that, a summary of that data? I
You
mean, I
will.
don't want the individual student stuff, but I want to know.
What we do annually, and I appreciate the questions, and these academic questions, I am grateful for those. Annually, what we provide to the board, at the board level, is a review of the information summarized that Mr. D is talking about at our January board workshop.
Okay.
And that will be an opportunity for you to sit with him and probe him with all kinds of questions
Yep.
for like 30 minutes.
Yep.
And then you'll be able to do the same thing with the high school principal and any other administrator in the district. And outside of that, that's the one opportunity annually where we sort of dive in workshop with the board. Outside of that, we do that at subcommittee level with the academic subcommittee.
Okay.
Yep.
So likewise with the, you said that you were faced with being a tier 3 school.
Yes.
Is this a tier 3 school?
Yes.
So you are a tier, and then you want to help increase the test scores. And did that happen? Did the test scores increase?
This past year or moving forward, the reason we put the data team in place is to work on that issue.
Okay, because well, here you're talking about the leadership team. I guess that's where I was.
Yep, we have a
So what's the
leadership team
difference
as well.
between the leadership team and the data team?
Absolutely. The data team is put together by our Title I data team folks. I have 7 of them in my building. And the leadership team is put together by some of the senior support staff, or some of the senior staff that I have. Ms. Ellis is on there, some of my middle school and elementary school. I don't like to make a lot of decisions in isolation. That's an older model. So when we have problems facing us, I'll pitch the problem to the folks and we'll try to come up with some ideas. We meet monthly in our leadership team, just like our data teams.
So what does it do? I mean, compared to the data team, which was doing that, was looking at the understanding of that.
Sure.
Yeah, the data team is comprised of Title I and
Okay.
ed techs.
Okay.
And they specifically, their job with Mr. D is to look at the NWEA test scores.
Okay.
And part of our RTI goal that we're working on as a school district is to, like I said earlier with the car, is to diagnose if little Johnny or Susie have a number sense concern or operations or phonemic awareness and literacy or decoding. Those test scores are able to isolate for us what the child's struggle is. And then Mr. D and that data team are working with the teachers to devise, and Mr. Twitchell, our instructional coach, to devise plans to help Susie or Johnny with improvement. The leadership teams, and actually I'll just comment on that because each school has a leadership team. And those work to, as Tom's talking about, solving problems. If there's I anticipate our principals are going to sit with those leadership teams early this month and say, hey, these are our district goals this year. What are we going to do at the school level to support the district goals? And that's really a leadership team function. And so those folks are advising the principals with school level decision making.
Not entirely, but they're preparing us for MEA testing as opposed to NWEA scores. So you've got different kinds of tests. Is it different tests that they do, and the leadership team works with the MEA testing?
Yeah, when you're reading through that paragraph, as well, I'm not telling you, you know, you're an educator. We have our NWEAs that are internal testing. That's our dipsticks, so we can get our metrics. And MEAs, of course, are state level testing.
Okay, and then what? There was one other thing about this here that you're doing that I was confused about. Okay. Well, I guess all I would say that it would be, the student assistant team took referrals and assisted students in various areas all year long.
Yes.
Okay, so that's last year.
Well-
And it would be helpful, what I would, like how many students were referred and what kinds of areas were they helped in? And again, I want to summarize, I don't want to be getting into specific students, but rather than saying that they took referrals and assisted students, how many referrals were made? Again, it's about collecting data going forward, and in what areas were students assisted and by whom? What were the various things that might have been assistance for them?
Great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall?
Nothing really new to add, other than with Mr. Tracy's help, we've soft launched the Facebook page for RSU 74. And we've had a few suggestions of posts you've probably seen on there going, hey, that's a great idea. It didn't come from me, it came from the public letting me know, so I'm taking no credit. But if you have any suggestions for that, please bring them to me or Mr. Tracy, and we'll try to get Facebook off the ground. Once that gets more off the ground, we have Twitter and Instagram ready and waiting. So.
Thank you.
Can I?
Mr. Dunn? Please.
First of all, I want to thank you for the stuff on your webpage, because it was very nice to open up and you saw all the people that work there, and I went to all the links, and the links made sense, and it was really very helpful. And what my comment about these things in general, about the data and so on, is that more and more things are added, and it means there's more and more things to take care of. So on the web page, for example, the website, there are lots of things. There are things, I won't say lots, it's too big of a statement, but there are things that are out of date or inaccurate or old that haven't been cleaned up. And that's going to be an ongoing problem. And the more things that you add to, and the same thing is true with the handbooks too, and because I found things I enjoyed. But that is an ongoing issue for the district, for people being, again, I'm looking at this from the idea of community, that the community needs to know what really is true and accurate about the district, and if things are there that are no longer valid and so on, then it's a problem. And I do hope that there will be some, as you develop these things, there'll be some mechanisms put into place so that there is a smoother update of the materials that are on there, because it's confusing and it's hard to find things, and there's some things that aren't right. And I know why it happens. It happens because everybody's doing so many things, and you have to add something new, and then something else hasn't happened. But it's an important thing to do so that people can understand what's going on. Thank you, particularly that your website.
Mr. Dunphy, anything? Mr. Dunphy, anything?
Nothing.
Sager?
Just that we're in a second week and we've had some busing issues. Opportunities, yeah. And we're trying to work everything out. Patience is a new word we'd like to spread out through our community with all of our parents. Maybe the new Facebook page can help with that, but I'm not sure. Happy to take any calls, have taken a lot of calls from parents, and some of them suggest some things, and some of them have some other things to say. But it's a learning curve for me, probably not as much for Mr. Dunphy, but I'm learning the ropes there, and hopefully by next week or the week after we'll get buses back in line and get everything smoothed out with the drivers. We did have a bus inspection before school started, had some issues there. Going to have another bus inspection the first and second week in October. Any of you want to attend that? It's an experience that you don't want to miss with the state police. And it's a great opportunity for the board to see what is going on with us working with Madison and them fixing our buses and us getting buses back. It'd be a great opportunity for everybody to see that. And I'm not saying that in a bad light, because with the state police, I've learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know, that some of my drivers didn't know. So it was a learning opportunity, and both mechanics from Madison were here that day to help assist with any problems that were going on. Thank you to Mr. Roy for that, making that happen and allowing that to happen. You have a report there for maintenance, up-to-date report for maintenance, if there's any questions about that or any other questions.
Do you know when in October the bus inspection?
He usually tries to
I
call,
thought he
like,
said October 1st.
he tries to call
around-
3 days
Sorry.
before it happens. So I would be happy to have Mr. Tracy notify everybody.
I would like to know if I, if
Yeah.
I was able, I might go.
Yeah, as soon as I know, I'll let Mr.
Just
Tracy
email
know,
me.
and he can notify everybody on his Facebook.
Facebook.
Email or
Email.
I'll
No,
give
no,
you.
no
And
Facebook.
not to Facebook. We're not
The-
going
Any
there.
other
the
questions?
Facebook, the
Any
eBay.
other questions? Thank you. Ms. Cram?
I have no comments unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Twitchell?
I'll start with an apology for the length of my report. It's the first one I've written for you guys, but I decided it probably would make sense to help communicate to you some of the things that I'm doing. So nothing to add to it, and I'll try and make them briefer in the future because I know you got a lot of stuff to plow through. So.
Questions?
Was that report available online? I'm not. The other administrators' reports are available online. I'm
I
not
don't
sure if
think
I
we-
saw a link to that one. That might be something we need to.
I'd be glad to do that, Mrs. Dunphy.
Yeah.
I didn't this time. It was the first
It was a new, right.
new report, and I've asked Mr. Twitchell to begin providing reports to you all. There was some question from the community, like what does an instructional coach do? And I thought, what better way than him spending each month here with us telling you what he does. So I did ask him to condense the report a little bit so that we can digest it before each meeting. But thank you for being here, Brian.
Good. Thank you, and thank you for answering my question.
Oh, not a problem.
Yeah, one of the things that I as I'm plowing through the website, there are things like Moby Max or Max Moby or whatever.
Yeah, Moby Max.
Yeah. And it's all Greek, So it was nice to get that, and I was hoping that maybe, I suggested maybe on the website, somebody could just sort of briefly say, if somebody's looking that up, if they see the link, and that Synergy is a program that we use for parents, teachers, and students to communicate about WIC and Moby, what Moby is. So, what is the title of the new math program you're looking to implement in middle school?
So at the middle school, we're working with a program. It comes from the Illustrative Mathematics Program, which is a authors of the standards are involved with that. And through various grant funding, they developed this program. The name of it gets a little, it depends on who provides it, because it's an open source program. So Open Up Resources is a common name for it, but the publisher Kendall Hunt is also carrying it. So it can be called by different names as part of a complication there.
Okay. And it says it's one of the highest ranked programs for middle schools. Who's ranking it?
So there's a website called EdReports, edreports.com, that ranks math programs, K through 12, and all publishers, and this came out as the highest ranked one when they released it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Twitchell, if I am correct, I've been on a lot of subcommittees, but I think last year you presented to the academic subcommittee about the illustrative math program, and one of the, Mr. Twitchell's been, he's a math guy, but he's been reviewing resources, and we piloted that a year ago in 6th grade math.
6th grade did a lot, 7th and 8th did
Yeah.
some as well.
And it is a textbook-less textbook that's all online. And so one of the, again, as a superintendent trying to keep an eye on your budget, an appealing piece of that is it would not be an ongoing math book purchase. And I think the cost is
The cost is zero.
Zero. My understanding, it's an open math source that's available for teachers, so making sure it's succinct and has the resources we need is something that he's charged with, but it was something that, this would be an example of, when we talk about curriculums and so forth, we talk about those more in-depth at the academic subcommittee level.
And if I can just add on to that, the high school is working with the Algebra 1 material this year that was just released, with the goal of next year adding the next course in the sequence, rather than a wholesale change, kind of phase it in. And 2 years from now, they will have released a K-5 program. And if everything continues to look good, you know, that's the direction that we're looking at going to. Right now with the K-5 Go Math, we pay every year, and it costs money. And I'm not anti-Go Math, but I'm also very conscious of the cost of these things. So if we can find better ways, I think that's good.
Anything else? In item 4C, committee meetings, we have one, buildings and grounds met just before this. The information that came out, and that will be discussed when we get to agenda item number 11. Okay with that, George? Agenda item number 5, citizen comments on agenda items. The RSU 74 school board will follow school board policy DDH/KD, and the public comment will be limited to no more than 30 minutes in total length, but all comments must be related to the business being conducted by the RSU 74 school board at the stated meeting on the current agenda. Do I have any citizens that wish to comment?
I do. Talking about buses, what does it cost for us to get our buses repaired to have them fail?
The current, may I respond? The current contract with MSAD 59 is right around $52,000 this year.
But their buses all passed, right? Yeah, they did.
I really
So
don't.
I think we need to look at a different place to take our buses.
If I could respond, just, it's more than $52,000. It's $52,000 plus parts and travel, and I mean, it isn't quite as simple as total cost is $52,000 a year.
Right.
They also provide some diagnostics for us that I don't think we could provide, and Scott, he can provide some diagnostics.
Does that.
Who?
Diagnostic.
Who does that?
No, we do not.
Well, but for a fee, but it's part of what.
So we're not getting all our bus service done at Madison.
No.
So we need to look at a place where we can do it all in one shot deal.
We will look into that. Thank you. Anybody else? Agenda item number 5A, to see if the board approves the main Hudson Trails trip for the middle school on October 2 and October 3, 2019. Do I have that motion? Troy, supported by Kevin. Any questions, comments, discussion? Objection, unanimous consent to approve. Motion carries. And item number 6, to see if the board approves the second reading of the employees' use of social media policy DCSAA. Do I have that motion? Troy? Kevin? Tracy?
Yes, I apologize, folks. I do have a couple of errors in policy GCSAA. And it's at the very bottom under the cross references. And I'll thank the board member who called me today to say, hey, wait a second. So I re-reviewed these, and we will need to, there's a couple I'm going to recommend you strike, and there's a couple that we're going to need to recode. Are you comfortable with me just reading that to you? There's not, they're not substantive changes, they're clerical errors, and I'll note those for you. Is that okay? So if you look into the cross-references section, AC, affirmative action, would stay the same. JHF and JFC are not mandatory policies, and we don't have those. So my recommendation is we would delete those. The first, the second and the third, JHF and JFC, we would strike those two just from the list. The next policy, GCSA, is, we do have that policy. In fact, our code is IJNDD. So instead of GCSA as listed, it would be recoded as per our policy, IJNDD. Okay? The next policy, GC, I can't read it because I struck it out, excuse me. The next policy down, -R, we would strike. Okay? JICK, we would keep Mullane in schools, we would keep that there. And the bottom two would be recoded. Instead of JO for those two codes, there would be JRA for student records. Excuse me, student records, JRA. And the last one is JRA-E, access to student records. JRA-E.
Any questions on those? Any objection, unanimous consent to approve the second reading as corrected? Motion carries. Agenda item number 7, see if the board will approve the second reading of the district social media policy, IJND. Do I have that one? Troy? Darren? Mr. Tracy?
Mr. Demchak, same thing, no substantive changes from last meeting, only that the cross-references down below. We would need to change, same one as the other policy, the GCSA-GCSA-R. We do in fact have that policy, but it would be recoded as IJNDD. IJNDD. And then we would delete the last policy on that list.
Any questions on that?
Outside of that, it would be as is.
Any objection to that?
Just the top cross-reference IJNDR.
We do have that, Mrs. Duffy.
Okay, great.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Objection, unanimous consent to approve as corrected. Motion carries. To see if the board will approve the emergency plan update. We'll have that one, Leroy. That's supported. Kevin, Mr. Tracy.
Great, thank you. Annually, we review the emergency plan, which we really revised last summer. This summer's revision was simply to include the ALICE protocol, which is the alert system protocol that we've discussed at the board level already. I went ahead and inputted that into the lockdown section of our policy. The actual changes are in your packet, noted at herein, and I'm just asking for your approval. Once I have it approved, the emergency plan, Mr. Demchak and I sign it, and we issue it to our emergency responders. But that is in short, the change.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, where is the emergency?
Well, we have 3 versions of the emergency plan. Okay, there's the robust emergency plan that has every off-site location, reunification points, confidential information that I don't release outside of my office and/or emergency responders. There's a general. There's a second tier level.
That's in your office?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
There's a second level, a yellow version that the staff have copies of. That's a little less robust than the big one, but it also has more details on the responses, necessary responses during different protocols or crisis or issues. And then there's a third level that the public gets. It's a green copy, which we can provide you. If we haven't already, we can get you a copy of that. Okay.
I wouldn't find it on the
and
website.
that's in my office. We have hard copies. This is something we do not put on the website. We've been advised not to because there's oftentimes information on it that we don't want to share. We'll get you a copy, a green copy.
Okay, any objection to unanimous consent to approve the changes?
Yeah, that's an objection, because I'm going to abstain since I haven't.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstained?
Bob,
Agenda item-
I just have a comment on the board member code of ethics that we were given. It hasn't been reviewed by the policy committee since 2010, so we probably should do that. It's 9 years old before we, I mean, maybe not before we sign it this year, but it should probably be on this year's policy work.
We got a policy committee meeting coming up 3 weeks.
Okay.
We'll make sure it gets there, so been comfortable signing it, don't sign it, we'll review it in the policy committee meeting. Thank you. Okay, to see if the board will approve annuitizing the scholarship monies received from the Kiwanis American Legion for student scholarships. Do I have that motion? Do I? Yeah. Okay. You're calling in, Mr. Bryant. Okay. What this is down to, about 10 years ago, the Kiwanis folded and had, how much money?
$30,000 they put into an annuity investment with Allianz Company.
Which company, I'm sorry?
Allianz.
And approximately 3 years later, they turned control of those monies over to the American Legion Post.
The Kiwanis disbanded, and they wanted another nonprofit to continue to manage the money. The money was intended for 2 $500 scholarships a year to Caribbean students in the name of the Kiwanis, and 2 $500 a year scholarships to Madison students, graduating seniors, in the name of the Kiwanis. That's been 11 to 12 years that they've been paying those scholarships. And right now, there's $40,000 in that account. I made a recommendation, Mr. Tracy, that you're able to annuitize this over 10, 15, or 20 years. If you annuitized it over 20 years, you're going to get enough money to pay those scholarships, plus whatever growth, because there will be growth over that period of time based on the stock market. And the money will come automatically. If you don't annuitize it, you get 2 issues, I think, that are a problem. One is you've got to ask for the money every year. And you have to get together with Madison because it's jointly owned by those 2 school districts. The second thing is Mr. Tracy and Bonnie, Mrs. Levesque, are the signatories to this. They both have to sign it. And anytime either one of them leaves, you're going to have to go through a lot of legal paperwork to change who can sign for that money. But if you annuitize it over 20 years, you're going to get at least the $2,000 a year, $1,000 for each school, plus whatever growth is there, which you can either use to make more scholarships, larger scholarships, or keep in your accounts so that it would go beyond that 20-year period. And so that was my recommendation, and I think it'll save you a lot of paperwork and headaches in the future if you do that.
In order to change it from the American Legion Post to the 2 schools, it took us the better part of 6 months.
Yeah, it's a lot of paperwork.
To do the
All
paperwork.
legalities. Right now, the schools are the owners. The 2 school districts own the account. The American Legion does not any longer. We have no say in it. It's strictly up to you.
The Kiwanis has no say in how those monies are spent. The American Legion has no say-so in how those monies are spent. The only caveat is it is to be used for seniors graduating, and it's left up to the 2 schools to decide under their current scholarship policies to divvy out the money to graduate seniors. It's enough that it's going to last the 2 schools 20-plus years. It's almost $40,000 sitting in it right now. It's the Legion's way of giving back to the community with the kids. Any questions, Sue?
So what would the scholarship be given in the name of?
The Kiwanis.
It would still be, okay.
They wanted it to keep their name in front of the public, even though they're gone.
And
So
that's in there?
It was a gentleman's agreement we had with them. It would be a gentleman's agreement with the
Okay.
school as well.
And does Madison have to do the same thing?
No, you'd have to agree to do it.
So I can speak to that. I spoke with Mrs. Levesque, and we both agreed that we'd like to sort of take ourselves out of the loop, which is why I'd like to pursue an annuity, and I'd like to have the board support me in doing that, which is why it's an agenda item. And again, it would do what Mr. Bryan is saying.
And it would be go through the attorneys as well to make sure all the dots and Ts are covered. Sue?
So if we vote for this, and Madison doesn't,
They will.
but what if they, so I'm just,
Well, playing the devil's advocate right now.
what if they don't? Does it just void out and it stays the way that it is? Or
That would be, yes, they
Yes.
both have to agree.
so we wouldn't be removing ourselves and they would be
No.
keeping, okay.
You know, clearly it's wonderful that Kiwanis and the Legion have done so much to try to make this continue to happen. Is there any thought that it needs to be separated so that there'd be a Madison portion and a Carabec portion?
I don't think it can then be done legally.
They can't?
And I think you can get the annuity checks sent to two different. So you'd get a check and Madison get a check on the anniversary date, which is in February. Every year for at least the next 20 years. Well, it would be for the next 20 years.
50%, so you list the beneficiary
Oh, I see. So
amount,
that's good.
and then 50/50.
Two beneficiaries.
That's right,
one would be-
and it would just come to the school districts, and then I wouldn't have to, and Mrs. Lebeck have to pursue that money annually for the kids.
Or promise to work here for another 20
Right, I mean, I don't want to go anywhere, but I think that it's a good idea to make this happen.
And then we'll forget about retirement.
All the money is, Kiwanis has no say-so in how those monies are spent anymore. The Legion has no say-so in how those scholarships.
Well, it's very,
Now-
it's of course very generous.
Now based to both the schools. Any other questions or comments? Objection, unanimous consent to approve the unitization process. Motion carries. Thank you, John. To see if the board will approve the purchase of the new school bus and award the formal competitive school bus bid. Do I have that motion? Troy, what's supported? Darren?
Of course, we've been through this before. There's a formal competitive bidding process that underwent this summer. We received 2 formal bids as a result of, by the receipt date and with the, that fit the specifications. One was from W. Cressy and one was from O'Connor. Mr. Chase, Cliff Chase is here from O'Connor to answer your questions. There were 2 board members present, myself at the opening of the bid. With all things considered, with the specifications, the location of O'Connor as opposed to a Southern Maine location, and some of our reference checks and former business, my recommendation as a result of the committee's recommendation is to honor the bid to go to O'Connor. There was about a $1,700 difference. O'Connor's was actually $1,700 more. But since working with them and having some questions answered, we were looking to have an air ride suspension added after the fact, and it looks like O'Connor's able to do that for us where the other company couldn't. So for multiple reasons, that's where it stands as far as our recommendation goes. But Mr. Chase is here to answer any of your questions. Thanks for sitting through the meeting, Cliff. But if you have any questions about either the vendor or the proposed school bus, he drove all the way up here from Augusta, so.
I have a question for you. What committee was that?
We didn't have a committee, I just invited the board chair and vice chair in for the opening of the bid.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Troy, Larry?
If I may, we called, Lori and I called a number of the drivers in and sat down and asked them we solicited their input essentially. So we asked them what they wanted, why they wanted certain specs, and we essentially got what we wanted. And one of O'Connor was the only one who could meet the both front and rear air ride suspension, and that was important to 3 of the drivers. So I mean, there wasn't a committee, but we certainly did solicit input from a number of the drivers.
I mean, I plan on voting with your recommendation. I think, you obviously know what you're talking about. I just was curious why it wasn't in front of a subcommittee. The Building, Grounds, and Transportation Committee met before this meeting, so I just...
Well, what we have to do when we do a competitive bid, we have to advertise. We have to advertise when we're opening the bid and so forth. Yeah. At least on the spec sheet. And I don't know, I would be happy to do that, but we haven't done it that way in the past. Typically, I just invite a board member in, and it's the chair, and then if the chair can't do it, the vice chair, and they both happen to be able to be available that day. And 2 years ago when we did this, I did that the same way, and that was my understanding of how they've done it in the past.
Yeah, I just remember 2 years ago a very lengthy board conversation about what the different bids were, what the warranties were about the bus. I mean, I distinctly remember that meeting. And we got all kinds of information, more than I ever cared to know about buses, in that meeting. Sorry. But, so I just didn't know why that practice wasn't the same with this.
I would agree with you. I think it was too much information for the board.
Okay.
I'd be happy to provide those, but again, after going through that process and utilizing 2 transportation people and vetting it through a process that I feel sufficient within the policy I can do, it was not another lengthy discussion I thought that we needed to partake in. So that's the honest answer.
So how much are we spending this year on a bus?
The total cost of the bus is 90. You have that on the top of your head, Cliff?
94.9.
94.9. We receive about $80,000 in state subsidy for that bus, so that difference would be what the district has to spend. Now we have to pay for that, and then we get reimbursed that money that I just told you.
So you're looking at increasing the school year's budget?
No, sir. We've already budgeted and included the payments in the current budget that's been approved by the people.
So just tell me a little bit about the bus, and how many seats does it have? I mean, I don't know.
All that information that I didn't want to know, she does. Now's your time to shine.
And then my other question is, and then do we then get rid of a bus?
Yes, we will ultimately, the state uses, and again, my transportation people know more about this than I do, but there's a typical mileage requirement and or age requirement, or both. And once that I hate to say this, but a bus becomes obsolete, we move that one out of the fleet and we move the new one in. So as we bring a new one in,
So does that go to the state, or do you sell it? Or
we retire the bus and sell it, ultimately.
Okay, all right. So I don't need to know a whole lot about bus, because I don't do bus, but, just a little bit about how many.
The bus is going to be built for a 77 passenger. K through 8 will be 77, K through 12 will be 73 passenger.
Talk a little bit about the diesel engine. It's a diesel engine?
Yes. Larry, you want that? You want to handle it? Or?
No, go ahead.
No, it's going to be a Type C conventional Bluebird built bus with a Cummins 240.
Mid-range,
250. 560 feet of torque. Don't know if that means anything to you or not, but you won't have problems climbing your hills.
You'll turn the wheels and climb the hills.
Exactly.
It's going to last for long. It's going to last all the miles it's allowed to last.
Well, that comes down to obviously maintenance, and the number one issue that we all deal with here in the state of Maine is the calcium, is rust. And I'm assuming Lori and Larry are going to have an extensive maintenance program built into their plan for the school, for the district. So, I'm going to be here to help them. I'm going to meet with Lori. I'd like to meet with Lori afterwards to talk to her a little bit. Because honestly, it's kind of disturbing to me hearing earlier, about the bus inspection, how it went. I personally want to know why the buses failed. And then on another topic, I'm not sure if the district knows or is aware, again, because Lori's new to this, but when you purchase a bus through me and through O'Connor's, you have lifetime service, free service, pickup and delivery. So if the bus ever needs servicing, even if it's after warranty, you call O'Connor's, we'll come and pick it up, bring it in, get it serviced, and bring it back to you for free. The service you're going to pay for. But the pickup service, we will pick it up, bring it back to you for the life of the bus, even after the warranty is expired. And obviously, I'm not a mechanic. I did not stay at a Holiday Inn last night. However, I always tell my customers, if there is a major issue, I want to be notified. My number one goal is to help the district. I want to sell you guys a bus, but I want to sell you buses every time you need a new bus. And the only way I can do that is by taking care of you. And if I have to go to fight, I'm not going to reveal the district's name here, but there was an issue earlier this year. I went to fight for a certain district. I got them $23,000 covered towards a new bus. But that's what I do. I can't fix the bus mechanically. I don't even know how to change the oil. But if I need to fight for you, logistically, I can do that. So, any other questions?
Something I do want to know is how many harnesses are in it? Are there any harnesses?
Child restraint seats, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, they're the first 4 rows on each side of the bus will have child restraint seats.
2 in each?
2 in each.
So 8?
It's a
No,
2
it's
rows,
16.
first 2 rows on either
first 4.
side with 2 in each, so it's 8
Those are the first 4.
harnesses.
I may be wrong, 'cause, again, I do a lot of specs, so you do have child restraint seats in the bus. Is it 8?
I think for 8.
Okay.
Any questions, comments, discussion? Is it unanimous consent to approve the purchase of the new bus? Motion carries. Let's take a break. Back in about 10.
Oh, I'm sorry, Debbie, got there.
Oh, are you done?
Agenda item number 11. We'll see if the board will discuss the fact finding regarding school financials and enrollment report for possible school closures. Do I have a motion to discuss? Go ahead. What?
I said, you never look this way.
This
It's always
is
like-
All around. She seconded. Okay. The topic is not to make a decision of whether or not we're going to close any school. This is to see if we want to push forward based upon the preliminary data we have and have the superintendent continue pursuing the numbers and look at everything concerned with the potential of closing one or other schools. Mr. Tracy.
Good evening, folks. I know that this is not an enjoyable topic, but coming through the budget season we had, and I'll call it the double budget season because we went through the process twice, it became apparent that we were maximizing external collaborations and that it was time to look at internal consolidations. School committee spoke about this. On July 11th, the school committee prompted me to actually formally research the financials and the enrollment reports on the district. So what is in this little packet? What I'd like to do tonight is just give you the facts and then sort of ask you what you'd like me to do next, if anything.
Wait, can they get people in the audience if they want one?
I don't see why not. I've only got a few copies, but somebody wants.
Anybody?
Yes, please. I take one.
Thank you.
So what is in this packet? The first page is predominantly, with the exception of current pre-K numbers, last year's financials in the various cost centers. I'll go through them with you line by line in a moment. The second page is anticipated, a brief, not exhaustive repair maintenance list that came out of my my maintenance and my operations folks. The last few pages are the NSDEC independent enrollment reports that we hired or had an outside company put together for us. I will go through these as exhaustively as you'd like me to this evening. It was concluded in July that I would provide the financials on all of our buildings in our district, so that's the, and I tried to do this as briefly as I can. I brought somewhere here the more robust reports if you have a specific question to ask me about utilities or something, but I gave you gross level, high level, cost center information. So, if you look down through that first page, you'll see listed CHS, CCS, GSS, and Solon. The top 5 lines are instruction. The top 4 lines are the individual cost centers: instruction, co-curricular guidance, tech, library, and then it says total instruction. So those first cost centers that really the public votes on is what's added into the cost, what I'm calling the cost of total instruction for the district. The next line down is school administration, and I'll stop right there. If we were to simply make a judgment on closing one or more building, none of those costs above would, I can say emphatically tonight, you're going to save. You're going to save on teachers, you're going to save on this, you're going to save on that. I can't tell you that because we still have to educate every student in the district. So really I wouldn't, I mean, if I was in your shoes tonight trying to look at, do we even move forward with discussing school closure, it would be preliminary and premature for me to tell you we're going to save on instruction because we still have to pay to educate kids. The next level, school administration, which is the school offices. The next level is operation of plant. And so operation of plant, that's every cost, that dollar and cent that goes into operating each building. So that's why those numbers are highlighted, because those would be the ones we want to at least pay attention to from a facilities cost. Transportation, I didn't cost out, nor did I special education, really, because I would have to extrapolate out of each cost center, cross-reference it over, because we might have a teacher working at CCS and special education, but I may cost out 1/5 of their salary over to Garrett Skank and so forth. So instead of confusing myself, which trust me would confuse everybody else if I'm confused, I did not cost that out. To say that any other cost center that would be a district-wide cost center, I did not include here. Unless it could be allocated and costed out per building, it's not on this sheet. Everybody understand that so far? And like transportation, we're still going to have to bus everybody, no matter what building they go to, okay? Debt service, if you look at CHS and CCS, there's still debt on those two buildings to the tune, last year's figures are what's provided to you in those two columns. There's none on Garrett Skank, none on Solon. So that would be the total cost represented below to operate the individual schools. Next, I listed for you student population, last year's student populations. That was last year's October 1st, was 200, 266 at CCS, 94 at Garrett Skank, and 84 in Solon, and those include pre-K.
Can I ask a question? Is the reason the Solon instruction is higher than GSS, comparison's sake, even though there are fewer students, because there are more, the teachers have more, salaries are higher because they've been there longer, is it?
That is part of it. That's part of it. Also, and if Carla were here, she could give you specifically, we moved a class size reduction. That's federal money that we use. I believe we moved that money over to Garrett Skank. So it's federal money that reduces the overall cost in the budget. But they're pretty equitable. But yes, the slightly higher costs are we have more veteran staff and so on.
So would you lose the federal money?
For class size reduction, I have not. Gene, if we were not reducing a class size, could we potentially lose that federal money?
You can apply for it.
We could apply, so that federal money, what happens every year is Ms. Butler writes projects that we say we're going to spend our federal monies on, and those get submitted for approval. So part of what we say we're using that for is the class size reduction. Okay, so I don't know, I can't say for sure we lose it. I don't know if we would or not. Any other questions on instruction before I move down to facilities? All right, so the next level on here are the facility-specific information, and these are the utility costs from last year. So what I have before you are just some simple, the total costs of utilities, which are water, sewer, heat, electric, and insurance, all factored into those costs. And I also put the square foot of the building. The square footage is what we pay insurance on. So I used allocated square footage that we also pay insurance on. That's what I earmarked for square footage for your report. Then I did a cost per square foot, which is simply those utilities divided by the square footage. Then I've got just heat broken out. I wanted you to see how much we're paying in heat, because that, beside electric, heat is the largest cost bearer in utilities. So I broke that out for you. And then I put the age of the buildings with also the renovation years there. Garrett Skank had a renovation in '91, and the high school had a renovation in, excuse me, that's an error there. That should say renovation, not under Solon. That should say that over with CCS. High school had a renovation in 2015.
High school had a renovation.
High school had a renovation 2015. Yeah, not Solon. My mistake. The other information, again, the other thing I should stop here. This is not just Mr. Tracy providing this information to you. I have been consulting with someone who's done this before, Paul Knowles. I told you he's a veteran superintendent. And his advice was, this was the information your board should have. So I've been sort of asking him to help me through the process here. So the other thing he said is, what are some maintenance issues? You can see I just put the number down. There's an actual list, preliminary list, on the next page. These are the things that the team basically just knew about from work over the last few months. Put miles from another school. The high school and CCS are only half a mile apart. Garrett Skank is 1.5 miles from Madison Elementary School. That's what that M is. And they're 5.3 miles to here. Solon is 8 miles from the high school. I think it's 8.1. Current enrollment. This is, I want you to understand that this is current pre-K. I was going to leave it off, but when I talked with Paul, he thought it was good information for you to have because our pre-K numbers are low this year. It's the first year that since I've been here. Maybe Gene, you can comment on this. We'll get to full enrollment. Have we ever had a slim pre-K enrollment such as this?
When we have, we've had taken 3-year-olds, a few 3-year-olds.
But we have had a few years where we haven't had enough 4-year-olds to fill the pre-K program. Okay.
Yeah.
That's important to know because I didn't want to just show this as this year only. Thank you, Julie. And then I have put a student-teacher ratio number in there. The other thing that's important to know, and I think this might have been where Mrs. Murray was asking a question here, is what other revenues do we get on these buildings that we'd otherwise lose if we closed the school? So if we close the high school, we currently get an extra $84,000 a year because we get a small rural schools adjustment for the high school. And for Solon, we received last year $47,439, and that's state money. That's the state. Those are state revenues that come in on those buildings for small rural schools.
Oh, I was just going to ask why they come in.
It's the rural small schools adjustment.
And CCS and Garrett Skank don't qualify for that?
It's because of the mileage, the 8 miles to the nearest school.
Right, but what? Oh, and Carabec is a high school and it's further.
It's 8 miles from somewhere else. And actually, I don't think it's 8 miles. I think it's like 18 miles. I think from the other nearest high school.
Okay.
Which, when I look at the criteria for isolated rural small schools, I'm not sure why the high school gets it. So, anticipated repair and maintenance list.
These two things are related.
Are there any questions on that? That's a lot of information I just threw before you.
So, the additional revenue.
Sorry.
She was talking.
I know that Solon has a bunch of, not a bunch, but some students that come from Caratown, tuitioned in students from other districts. Does Garrett Skank and CCS have similar tuition students?
We have some, the number's 21. And I have that
I
note.
just didn't know if one school had a larger number of.
Yeah, that's not, is that in here for tuitioned in and out
Harris
per
doesn't
school?
have tuition. We have some kids on superintendent's agreements, but no.
Right,
one
but I'm
pays
just saying,
tuition.
because we get money from Carrolltown
Yeah.
itself
Right.
for at least
We have 3
4 to,
Carrolltown.
what's that?
We have 3 Carrolltown.
Oh.
4 Carrolltown students this year.
And do we get any from Bingham or, oh, that would be a superintendent's agreement.
But I think that that's relevant though. Is that in here?
It's not in here, but I got that information today. There's 21 tuition students. I don't have the breakout right in front of me as far as what town they're from.
Tuitioned out and what about,
Tuition, that's gonna be-
not tuition, I mean superintendent's agreements
That's
because,
it. That's in the end. I'll go over that in enrollment.
I'm just confused about that. Are you saying the 21 are students who are tuition out or in, or is that just 21 make superintendent's agreement?
No, we have 46 last year that were tuitioned in and/or superintendent agreement in. And I'll cover that in the enrollment report in just a minute. No, that's okay. That's okay. It's okay.
And for the ISSA, so this high school gets 84,000 because of its distance from the next nearest high school or something like that. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yeah.
And so Solon gets 47,000. We get that money on behalf of Solon because it's distance from another school.
School,
Okay.
yes.
clarify tuition for me, if they tuition in, you cannot count them as enrollment for state subsidy purposes?
Correct.
Okay, but superintendent's agreements you can?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Okay? So the anticipated repair list on the next page, did I cover everything on the first one? Yeah. I don't know if the Building and Grounds Committee wants to help me, but basically we have a number of issues. All of these are, some of these are very costly, others are not, overly costly out of all of these items. I guess I'll just read down through the list unless you folks, you want to just ask questions on the list instead of me reading through the whole list?
Why don't you give us a minute to read through the list now?
Sure. It looks like right now we need to replace 40 windows at Garrett Skank. We had an inspection done where we could give you the name of the inspector that said the boiler might have 5 years left. Compressor for venting system needs to be replaced. 24 gym light fixtures, this is Garrett Skank, need to be replaced. Bulbs and fixtures are obsolete. Lunch tables need to be replaced. The entire basement should be dug, so drainage for the external part of the building, the basement. Trim is all needs to be repainted. Gutters need to be replaced. Accessibility ramp for playground access. New carpet and tile for basement hallway. Classroom upstairs and hallway upstairs need tile or carpet. Fire escape needs repair, roof repair, and fire panel update. And the fire panel needs to be updated in every school. Solon needs a new door to the playground, window replacement in the kindergarten room, new interior gym doors, classrooms upstairs and down need new carpet or tile. And on both of those issues, we have been doing a cycle to do 1 or 2 classrooms a summer. Lunch tables need to be replaced, fire panel update in all buildings. Air ventilation at the high school needs to be replaced, water damage. All exit exterior doors need to be replaced. All exit windows need to be replaced. And I will add the roof, the awning and roof on the back of the high school gym needs to be repaired or replaced. We just talked about that in the subcommittee tonight.
No, the roof needs to be repaired, this whole roof too. Just patching it don't work.
We're patching it, yeah.
Or patching don't work.
CCS, the gym partition needs to be repaired, cracks in the hallway, and the fire panel, as I've said. That is not an exhaustive list. It's what we have to get together for this meeting.
Questions, comments, discussions on those?
So some of these, like, I just came from the buildings meeting, and a number of these things weren't discussed at all. talked about that needs to be done. And there's also the thing to be kept in mind, that these things are more cost, some of these items don't cost very much. You can't really just compare by it looks like the length of the list would suggest that a whole lot needs to be done. Whereas, for example, this high school project with the roof and the gym is it's probably gonna be very costly. And even though there's only 4 items on the list here, there's a whole lot more. Yeah, so I don't know how much we can use the list itself without knowing what the thing would cost as a way of understanding whether what state the buildings are in.
Is there have we put a number to the total repairs that are on
No,
here yet?
sir.
No,
We
thank
do not
you.
have numbers yet.
Okay, thank you.
It's just an estimate on the 40 windows.
I guess when I look at the list, to me, it looks like we haven't been doing a lot to Garrett Skank. I guess I'd like to see the list of what's being done at the other schools currently.
What was provided tonight, Tammy, is this from the
Okay,
summer?
well, that was for the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I
Right.
think that's our most exhaustive list.
So was Garrett Skank on there at all?
It is.
But not a lot. So I'm assuming maybe next year Garrett Skank would get more, just like Solon got a bunch this year, CCS got a bunch this year. I'm just making that.
Depend on how much budget they're gonna let us have for capital improvements again.
Well, the oil boiler, is the pellet still there or not?
Yeah.
We need both to operate right.
Right, but the oil's not used all the time, correct?
We've been
No, it
using,
is.
we've been
It is.
using both.
It is.
Yeah.
You have to use the oil, and once winter hits, oil and pellets are both run.
I was just,
Because- Yeah, because took out oil boilers to put in pellet boilers, and one oil boiler does not heat any of these schools by itself.
so have we looked at heat pumps?
You have a question, Barbara, sir?
Yeah, so we have a number for windows at Garrett Skank that need to be replaced, but it says all exterior windows need to be replaced at the high school. What's that number?
I wasn't asked to get any numbers, I was just asked to compile a list.
Okay. Is 40 all of the windows at Garrett Skank?
I believe so, either 40 or 45, yes.
What was the estimate on that?
Between $450 to $500 per window to buy, and then installation on top of that.
We're looking at, give or take, $600 a window.
And theoretically, that would be the cost of all the windows in Carrabeck High School? Or are they different? More money?
Doors. All makes, on this end of the building, all make exterior
The rest is
windows and doors.
And you have to replace all of those?
Those doors up there should have been replaced when we did the.
So more than $600 a piece?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments, discussion?
Well, this maybe is not the right time for this, but, you know, that's just saying what we're gonna do with the windows is replace all 40 of them, 45 of them. Whereas there might be some alternatives to that, for example, you know, boarding, you know, breaking up perhaps some and reducing the number of windows that you use, which can be done and can also be done aesthetically if people are careful about it. Particularly like that, is there a third floor that there is on that building? Which isn't used, right? So there's a storage. Right, so that, you know, something might, so maybe it's not that many, but.
Any other questions, comments?
What's wrong with the fire department? They get inspected every year, why are they need to be replaced?
What's wrong with the what?
Fire engines.
Because they're old.
So why haven't they been an issue before now?
They have been,
So why aren't we taking care of it
Wait.
before now?
because it costs a lot of money, and we don't have it.
So you guys get $10.5 million this year, you got budget up on last year. It should be issued, being the fire department, and the taxpayer, it should have been taken care of for this.
The panels all are in working condition. We have had some issues up here with the 5 panel. Right now, we're having problems with some other 5 panels. I talked to a guy today, next week they're coming up to check them, they give us the but they all are in working condition. They are
Well, it shouldn't
older
be an issue
panels.
if they're old, they just need to be upgraded, so it shouldn't be on the list.
Some of these panels you cannot upgrade because the equipment in them is obsolete. That's what I was told today. I don't do that work for a living.
Yeah,
If they're working, they're not.
the fire panel at the high school, was that not replaced when we did, I remember talking about that.
It was not.
It was replaced when you guys did the upgrade, because we came quite a few times to shut them off, because it was doing upgrades.
I was almost positive that it was.
Some of
Yes.
the panel, there's more than just one
Right.
panel in there.
Yeah.
Some of the units were replaced. Over at the shop, there was one replaced.
Okay.
And then it didn't work. We've had to have work done over there again.
Okay.
Um,
And this is just to get everything up to code?
Yep.
Like, okay.
Functioning, so we could get a permit for everybody else.
Okay.
Continue.
All right, to the enrollment report, the colorful one, I'll take you through that. The first sheet front and back is a historical enrollment. My understanding was they took the October 1st enrollments, and they pulled it from the state website, and so that's what they gave us. So if you take a look at the birth year and then the school year, and the third column over, you have school year, and that will show you the last 10 years of enrollment data in the district per grade. There are grade combinations down below, such as what you can read what those are. Then we've got the historical percentage of changes. And so the last 10 years, if you take a look just at the change, you got a 21.5% reduction in student enrollment to the tune of 162 students, is what was reported. It's shown on this graph, the last 10 years. Reduction, we're talking district-wide. I do not have this parsed out by school. This is how it was given to me. So you can see that in the graph form. If you go to the third page, it's the enrollment projections by grade. Now if you take a look, what they do is they take, and just, so I asked them, I said, what formula do you use? Now, those of you that were in subcommittee and we were looking at populations and budgets 2 years ago, really proud of Mr. Hall because he helped me with we kind of created our own formula by calling all the town offices, looking at the 2010 census, getting a historical enrollment. So we looked at basically everything they did and came up with similar results. And so what they look is, they look at birth rates, current anticipated graduations and prior enrollments. They also look at residential information such as real estate and building construction permits. So that's what they look at to create this formula that they use to come up with enrollment projections. So if you take a look at this year, 2019, and you project, you project into next year, 1920. This year's 1920, you actually see a slight increase over last year on their projections. And current enrollment, we're actually down 4 students over what we had on this day last year. That doesn't necessarily mean anything because if you ask the principals, there's a lot of influx in and out going on right now. And obviously I'll have updated enrollment figures for you in October, or the 1st of November. So the projections here, what they do is they take everything I just told you, they put that together and they allocate out what they have for current enrollments. They aggregate that out over future years, and then they backfill that with births, projected births, etc. And so if you look at this sheet, and I'm looking at, doesn't have a page number, but it's enrollment projections by grade at the top, this big thing here. There are 3 colors. There's hopefully yours printed, there's a white, and then there's below the kind of the darkened black line on my sheet, I'm sorry, but it's light blue. On yours it looks like it's white again. Just below that line for 3 or 4 grades, and that information is based on current birth information. And then everything below that, it would be a light blue color in yours, is based on projections, right? They're guessing, okay?
So don't even look at that.
Well, no, what they're looking at, so 2000.
Estimate of births, how accurate can that possibly be?
Because in 2025, 24, 25, kids haven't been born yet, obviously.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. How accurate can that possibly be, that estimate? Like, how can you guess at, I think this person's going to have 3 kids? Like,
Or how many might
that's
move,
not accurate.
How many might move in or
I
out?
mean, you cannot.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah.
Kids already born, I understand that, but like, you can't.
Yeah, they use the formula, and I'm giving it to you. I'm not telling you it's right. I'm just telling you what I've got. So then you can see the enrollment in grade combinations and then the projected changes. They're anticipating 70 students less in the next 10 years over the course of the school district. If I recall, when I aggregated out, when Mr. Hall and I did it, it was a reduction, but it was about half that. It was more like 30, 35 students. So we'll know in 10 years who was right, I suppose. But my guess is, by what we know of, at least in the next 5 years, is we're projecting a reduction. I would call it a stabilized reduction. I don't think you're going to have an aggressive reduction based on this information and just what I've seen and the work I've done on births, childbirths, not myself on births, excuse me. What I meant by that was calling the towns and finding out who was born in each town. See if I can get a chuckle out of people. It's kind of heavy in the room. And
I don't think you should go.
No, I shouldn't go there. Okay, so what we have are, it looks like what I'm calling a stable reduction, which is the district seems to be stabilizing with a few students less per year. Okay, if I had to guess. The next page, it shows that trend again allocated out over future 10 years. Okay, and then that's that 70 student reduction based on the things I just told you in graph form. The next sheet is the longitudinal trend, which shows you K-12. This is K-12, 2008 to 2028. So you have the last 10 years, you have the future 10 years, and you have that on a line graph. I think we did, somebody helped me do the math on this, and I think it was 232 kids. That's with what we've actually lost in the last 10 years, 162, plus the 70 is the 232 projected in a 20-year span. Again, there's a side of me that's with Mrs. Harrington on this. I mean, it's part. I don't want us to take this information to the bank because they're estimates. It's just it's a piece of information in the big puzzle. The second to last page are births, and I was looking at this with someone the other day. I don't understand why births and enrollment don't correlate. You think they'd be, I used to teach, sorry to do this, I used to teach economics. It's called an elastic variable, when two variables are together, right? And you'd think those would be more elastic, where they might be flexible, but you'd think you'd see, right? And because they're 5 years apart, you say, well, this many students were born, one line. So up above, you'd assume you'd project similar graph for enrollment, right? And it seems to be all over the place. I don't know what that means outside of...
Did you ask them?
I did not ask that question. What I did ask was how, what do other districts see as this relevant, when this information comes to fruition? And I didn't get a percentage accuracy. Because there are so many variables like aging population, inward and outward migration, and the economy, like somebody brought up earlier, if there's 100 more jobs at the mill in the next year or two, that could affect. So because of that, no stigmatographer or whatever they're called places any kind of, this is factual. And I'm certainly not going to tell you that. The last page has those pieces of information you were asking earlier about. Excuse me, the last page has, I'm going backwards in my packet, I'm sorry. Last page has the additional data, which has building permits, enrollment history. There was not enough information on parochial schools. We've got last year, 37 coded homeschoolers, 19 students who choiced out to a charter school. We have 4 students in special education out-of-district placement, and then we have 4 students who've tuitioned in or superintendent agreement in. 46, excuse me. Any questions on that information?
Yes. Your K-12 residents choiced out, is that public schools as well, or is that just charter or magnet schools? Because that number seems extremely low.
That, I believe, is what we recorded for charter, just charter and magnet schools,
Not public.
We don't have resident, I don't have resident out-of-district placement.
So you don't have superintendent agreements?
Superintendent agreement, excuse me, in this report. They didn't ask us for that.
Okay.
But would we want to know that?
Yeah.
I believe that is what that is.
In the new pool?
I don't think they could get the information.
That would skew something by a little bit, wouldn't it?
You'd think.
Can you please
What is the
address
question?
that?
I'm sorry. I asked if you look at the building permits issued, it's got A and S, and I'm assuming that was Anson and Solon. I don't see any New Portland or Emden.
I believe that was coded by town, unless.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
how I would take that.
And what we have is the information we were able to get from the places in which people, this company asked us to get the information. And trust me, there was some information we couldn't get. So we have what we have. And we have, Linda, do you recall, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, the out-of-district placement, excuse me, superintendent agreements last year out of district. You know that off the top of your head? And I don't want to give you a number because
I mean, I can get it and email it.
Yeah, we'll email it.
I didn't see any data relating to the last 10 years with jobs lost in the area, because certainly that would have affected dramatically some of the reduction in enrollment. Is there any way of capturing any of that?
I can look into it. That was not part of this report.
Okay.
So the unemployment rate?
I mean, I think the
Not
big,
necessarily unemployment, because that may or may not change. People could leave, and not. They could leave to follow jobs rather than stay and be unemployed. So I'm not sure unemployment would really cover it, but closings of different mills that we've lost or.
Any questions?
But to go with that kind of study, or a lot of what I would call your mill workers were older and having a young family.
Older and lived out of the area. Vast majority of the people lived out of the area.
So you don't think that would be relevant?
I think a piece of it would, but I don't think it would be real.
Well, none of this in its entirety is, but it's all little pieces that add.
Maybe I can do it.
So we don't know what some of this means. So overall,
Okay. Don't speak up.
Oh, I thought you were asking.
Please.
just so we could hear you.
Oh, okay. What this is saying that we've got more students who are out of our schools from some sort of choice, whether they're being homeschooled or choice with a charter or magnet or outplacement special ed than we have coming in who are choiced in, tuitioned in, or other non-residents.
Yes.
Is that correct? And my other question
Yes.
is, do we have any data on the number of students relative to the two villages in Anson? Like how many students in the schools would be considered North Anson as their home base? And how many would be Anson? Do you have any of that?
The transportation folks can help me, but we have recent enrollment, like for at Garrett Skank, the South Village in South Anson. We're hovering around 90, 92 or 94 students in that range currently. So all of those students are either coming from New Portland or Anson. How many are coming from North Anson, do you know?
Or,
There's some at both schools.
Right, there's some crossover.
Or-
And then-
or I would say Emden, if you're including pre-K in that number, there are Emden resident kids that go to Garrett Skank.
That's right.
But there's also Emden kids that go to Solon.
Right, right.
Right? I mean, both
Yes.
schools are.
Yes. Yeah, because there's no preschool at Caribbean Community School, so that all of the 4-year-olds in our district would go to either Solon or Garrett Skank for pre-K.
And so would this, if you're looking at this, wouldn't this destroy your preschool? Because where the heck would you put them?
Yeah, I think it would be premature for me to comment on the educational program or how we're going to educate students if I don't even know if we're talking about a school closure. I was asked to provide financials, and I was asked to provide enrollment reports, and it's really up to you whether you want me to pursue this any further. Pursuing it further would be me coming back and saying, here are some options on how we'd educate our kids if we were to shut down a school or another, for example. And so that would, so in other words, future meetings would allow me to comment on where we would do preschool, for example.
But see, I don't agree with that piece of it because you're gonna have the public all in an uproar if this board says, yeah, we wanna look into it future, just to get the answer of what would happen with preschool. You see what I mean? That to me is, why can't we have those answers before this board would say?
Because I don't know, Mrs. Murray. I don't
You could
know.
look
I don't, in other words, I don't know how we would educate 4-year-olds if we were to close one of the schools that have a pre-K.
Well, this has been talked about for many, many, many years, correct, Bob? I mean, to squeeze kids into another school, at some point, you're gonna either have to shift kids from the junior high up to the high school, and I mean, that's what the elephant in the room is about. Nobody really wants to talk about it, but you're gonna be shifting kids all the way, so it's not just one town that's gonna lose a school, is that these other towns gonna realize there's gonna be a huge shift across the board. So I don't know.
So can I make a motion? To go into executive session pursuant to MRS Title I, Chapter 13, Subchapter 1, SS 405-6A, Superintendent Evaluation. This is just a discussion item, and we're not getting anywhere, so that's my motion. Is to move on to item number 12.
Yeah.
Done.
That's supported.
Yeah.
Take unanimous consent to go into executive session. Executive session at 8:28.